Today on the podcast is the last time you have heard me say it. Every time I say it, I will put $50 into the 32 Thoughts podcast fund, which does not exist, but I will start it the next time I use that phrase.
Yes, today we're going to talk a lot about the Anaheim Ducks. Welcome to 32 Thoughts. Merrick alongside Friedman once again. And we're going to talk about the Quack. We're going to talk about the BOG. We're going to talk about Devon Taves. I want to get your thoughts on the New Jersey Devils as well. Perfect. I know it's only exhibition, but give the Devils some fun, Elliotte. We'll talk about the Devils. I want to talk about Patrick Laine at center. That is interesting. And Dustin Wolf back to the Wranglers. We'll talk about the Calgary Flames coming up. But first, I am curious. I want to get into the contracts in a couple of seconds. So Trevor Zegras signs a 3-year deal, $17.25 million for an AAV of 5.75. Jamie Drysdale, 3-year contract, $6.9 million, 2.3 is the AAV. But here's the question for you. So we've seen Pat Verbeek go through it, along with Jeff Solomon, we should point out as well. Pat Verbeek go through it with Troy Terry, getting real close to getting into the arbitration room, and then pretty much taking it up, I don't want to say right to the very last minute, but pretty close, with Trevor Zegras and Jamie Drysdale. What have we all learned this summer about Pat Verbeek?
Pat Verbeek was hired as the Ducks general manager on February 3rd, Jeff. Mm-hmm. But now, 10 months later, October the 5th, we know who he is and what he is about. And that is that now Terry had the leverage because he was going to be a UFA. But what we learned is that if Pat Verbeek has the leverage on you, you better, when you step in the room for negotiation, make sure you have brass knuckles, sharpened nail files, a flak jacket, and whatever other medieval weaponry you can think of, a mace, a sword, and a shield. Wow. And even then, it might not be enough. What the message that Pat Verbeek and, yes, Jeff Solomon, we'll get to him in a second, have sent is that the Anaheim Ducks will scratch and claw and use every facet of the CBA when they have the hammer. And if you don't like it, that's tough BBs.
Did we see that with Zegras? Did we see that with Drysdale? And as far as Zegras goes, you know, we've talked plenty on this podcast about Trevor Zegras. You've maintained from day one this is not going to be a long-term deal. This is going to be a bridge deal, and there it is. It's a 3-year deal for Trevor Zegras. Your thoughts on both of these? We will get to Solomon here in a second, but your thoughts on both these deals?
Look, Zegras, I think, ended up getting a bigger number. As they said, you know, and you said, I said from the beginning it was going to be a short-term deal. You know, basically in the aftermath, I think both Pat Brisson and Verbeek admitted that almost right from the beginning, they knew it was going to be 3 years. The really hard thing was getting to the number. You know, I just think that the Ducks, they grinded from the beginning. They were going to make this as tough a number or as tough a negotiation on Zegras as they possibly could. And it took a while for them to get to that 5.75. You know, one of the things that's interesting to me is that after Zegras signed, one of the conversations I had with someone was, and it was another manager, and he said the thing that, you know, we talked about Zegras, how he's a confident guy. He's not afraid to say, you know, what's on his mind. But the one thing that he said, and it's something that he's noticed in negotiations, I thought this was really fascinating, Jeff. He said to me, when he negotiates against a player or with a player, whichever way you want to put it, one of the things he tries to find out is who is the player close with? Who are his friends? Because what he says is you're not only negotiating against the player and the agent, but it's also the family. And the thing is, if he's got other friends in the NHL, you look at what their contracts are. And, you know, he talked about with Zegras, some of his good friends are Jack Hughes, who's 8x8, and Cole Caulfield, who's in the 8x7 area. And so the other thing that he's thinking there is there's probably some kind of a friendly rivalry there with Zegras, where he's looking at those guys and saying they got their full long-term deals and he didn't. And that's not, he said that's not anything that Pat Verbeek is going to care about or worry about. But he says he thinks about that. Like in the long run, he says, if I really clobber this player at the table, is he going to be looking at his peers and saying, I'm not going to forget this the next time that I do a deal? So I think the whole thing is really interesting. Like I said, I don't think Verbeek cares. I think he's going to do what he thinks is right for the Ducks, which is what he should do. But he really grinded Zegras, and I think at the end when it got done, it took a long time for the Ducks to get to where Zegras got. I'd like to say one thing about Zegras too. I've mentioned that he's a confident lad. And, someone said to me, when I hear you say that, it's almost like you're trying to say that, like, he's cocky, arrogant, and people don't like him. I'm not really saying that. I just think he's a really confident guy, and he's not afraid to say what he thinks. Now, are there some hockey players who don't like that? Yeah, I think it's been proven that some don't. But there's one thing I saw from Zegras. It was at the NHL Awards in 2022. And that year, I was part of the award show with a young man named Jake Thibault. And Jake Thibault presented the Calder Trophy to Morris Sider. And Thibault had been injured. He suffered a severe spinal cord injury playing hockey. And he's in a wheelchair. Great kid. Like, just a great kid. It was a real honor to meet him and present with him. And he wanted to meet Zegras. Zegras was there, and he said to me, do you think I can meet Trevor Zegras? And there was a number of players who were like that. And, I walked over to Alex Gilchrist, who works for the Ducks, and I said to him, this is Jake, and he wants to meet Zegras. And what Alex said to me was, just tell me a little bit about Jake's story, because Trevor will want to know it, and I can have him prepared to meet Jake. So he did. He walked over, and then Zegras came over, and he was fantastic. And, we spent about close to 10 minutes with Jake. It was, like, you're not a bad person if that's who you are. So I just thought I would mention that story based on, somebody saying that to me. It's like, I'm wondering what you're trying to say about Zegras. I'm not trying to say anything bad, but I do think he's very, very confident guy and believes in what he thinks. And it's probably one of the reasons the guy's in the NHL. Now, in the Drysdale case, as I wrote in my notes on Wednesday, I had Duck fans sending me DMs. I have the least interesting DMs in the world. They're full of Ducks fans asking why Drysdale won't just take a one-year deal.
Saw that, yeah.
I got the impression that the Ducks never budged on Zegras. Or if they did, they didn't budge by much. Like, I have a feeling Drysdale would have been more than happy to take a one-year prove-it deal. But I just don't think, with the 2 years before he had arbitration, I don't think the Ducks want anything to do with that. I thought that Verbeek and Solomon came in. They were like, it was like the Anchorman brawl. They came in with the chains wrapped around their fist, one with that and the other one with an axe, and they said, here we go, and you're going to lose this rumble. And they didn't back down. They said, this is what we're going to do. And I think the really tough thing for Drysdale is, he's quiet. He's not much of a talker. I don't know him well, but I asked and I was told this. He's not much of a talker. And also, like, he missed almost all of last year. Like, this is a guy who needs to get in and play and wants to get in and play. And I just think at the end, he was like, I'm not going to budge these guys. And this is it. And I'm going to take it. Sometimes, as I say all the time, Jeff, sometimes you have the leverage and sometimes you don't. And in this case, he didn't have it. And I will say this. I think there's a lot of teams that are privately texting Pat Verbeek right now and saying, way to hold the line.
Thank you.
And Pat Verbeek, Yzerman Light, as a player, he was the little ball of hate. And as negotiator, he's a little ball of hate. Like he's consistent.
Let me just pause this conversation then, because you mentioned Steve Yzerman. This sounds exactly like Steve Yzerman. I'll be honest with you. Does this not seem, feel, sound, smell like you don't need to scratch? You don't need to scratch very deeply here to make this feel like a Steve Yzerman type situation. Like we talk about, the last round of managers that came from Detroit. Like you look at all the managers that, Ken Holland graduated to big positions in the NHL, whether it was the aforementioned Steve Yzerman, whether it was Jim Nill, and, you take on some of the personality of the general manager that you worked with for a number of years. I'm looking at Steve Yzerman now, and Pat Verbeek goes to Anaheim, and maybe somewhere down the road, Sean Horkoff or Chris Draper end up managing a team. And I wonder how much of the Yzerman personality they're going to have, because I'm looking at this deal, honestly, Elliotte, and it does sound like this was a deal that was certainly obviously done by Pat Verbeek, but doesn't it feel like strategically it was similar, if not identical, to Steve Yzerman?
Oh, 100%. I mean, first of all, I think this is where we should mention Solomon. Like we've talked briefly about Jeff Solomon before, and he used to be a player agent, and now first he was with the Kings, and now he's with the Ducks. He is widely seen as one of the toughest, if not the toughest negotiator around. And so, first of all, you get that in terms of what you already have there, and then you add Verbeek. Like, it's going to be hard. Everybody knows it now. And the thing about Verbeek that I think is most interesting, and another agent reminded me about this on Thursday, is that Verbeek twice had contract disputes as a player. And remember, he was the first player, and I don't like using the phrase holdout, because I think if you don't have a contract, you're not holding out. You're in a contract dispute. Now, the second one, I think, was actually a holdout, but the first one was he was the first player to say no to Lou Lamoriello, to have a contract fight with Lou Lamoriello. And he got traded to Hartford. He goes to Hartford. The first year, he's their number 2 scorer behind Ron Francis. He's second year there. He's the leading scorer because Ron Francis gets traded to Pittsburgh, so he passes him and finishes leading scorer. And he's heading into his option year, and he thinks he's underpaid. I think he was making about $600,000 at the time. I searched the internet, which is never wrong, so I'm sure all this information is completely accurate. But I think he wanted to double it, and the Whalers wouldn't go past $700,000. That's what I found out there. So he held out, and he didn't play, and he ended up going to arbitration, and I think he ended up getting about $900,000 in arbitration. But he missed, I think, a month of the season, and they stripped him of the A. So I think it's always interesting to me, I got no problem with that. I always felt you should fight for what you're worth. I do think once you sign a contract, you should honor it. But I also think if you're going to do something and you are prepared to handle the consequences of your actions, then that's the way it goes. And Pat Verbeek was well known as a player, and he was a big member of the Players Association. He was well known as a player that he would fight for every right he was entitled to under the CBA, and because he laid it out there on the ice, and he did, he was a hell of a tough player, he fought for every dollar he felt he deserved to earn. And it's always wild to me that a player like that, now he's on the other side, and he's just as much of a killer on the other end of the negotiation. The other thing, too, we should say is... Hang
on. We've seen this before. We've seen...
Yeah, Kevin Lowe.
Mike Gillis, for example, is a great example.
Mike Gillis,
as an agent, fought for every single nickel and dime for all of his clients. Mm-hmm. And then when he became a manager, he fought to keep as much money in the Vancouver Canucks organization as possible. It's just different.
Kevin
roles,
Lowe was the same way.
Kevin Lowe, absolutely.
He went to New York and made more money. And then he came back and he ran the Oilers. Like, it's kind of the circle of life. It's the Lion King, Jeff. It's the circle of, but still, it is kind of funny to me that you go from one side to the other, kind of depending on who's paying your bills. And I think there's a lot of people like that. But, like I said, I think Verbeek has sent the message. Everybody knows who the Anaheim Ducks are. And, I will say this. People think he's got a really good eye for talent. Before, when he was behind the scenes in Tampa Bay and Detroit, and that side of the world more than I do, but clearly they are putting together a really good prospect base.
Oh boy.
But like, I had one agent say to me, holy smokes, like, you almost don't want your kids to get taken by Anaheim because that the first 2 contracts are going to be murder. I think the one thing that Verbeek and Solomon have to deal with here, and you kind of mentioned it with Troy Terry, is what happens when the pendulum swings back. And I talked about it with this one executive the other day, and he said to me, the way you look at it is these are both 3-year deals. And there's a lot that can happen between now and then. Like, you understand that the player could be very upset right now. Zegras could be upset. Drysdale could be upset. But the thing is, you believe if everything goes well for 3 years, that will go away. You make the player happy. Eventually, hopefully things work out and the player grows with the team and they feel good about where they're going and the player wants to stay. The one thing, though, is that the agent never forgets. The agent cannot wait to the next negotiation. They're writing down in their notebooks, agent 0, Ducks 1. And the next time out, they want to even the score. And what he said to me is, you feel you can win that if the player is happy. He says, if you're going into a negotiation and the player's unhappy and the agent's unhappy, you're really in trouble. But if you're going into a negotiation and the player's happy, but the agent is like, I'm going to get you back for last time, you think you can get that done. So that's going to be over the next 3 years. And like I said, it's a long time. We could all be hit by buses in 3 years. Then you can solve the hurt feelings for now.
Okay, so there's the Anaheim story. So the other big story, the Board of Governors in New York, you were there. I want to start off by talking about what the Commissioner, Gary Bettman, had to say about a couple of things. And you wrote about a couple of things in your latest blog at sportsnet.ca. I'm curious, what was the bigger story to you, the salary cap or expansion?
I think the fans care about the cap the most. So I would say that because I think it's the thing the fans care about the most. However, to me, it was as close as someone can say we're going to expand without saying we're going to expand.
Yeah.
Like it's coming. And I know a lot of people look at it and they say 32 teams is enough. We don't need any more. So if you take a look at the difference between the NHL and the NBA, Major League Baseball, and the NFL, is that the NHL has the fewest of those teams in the United States. Now, there's more teams in the NHL than there is in Major League Baseball, say, and there's the same number in the NFL, but 25 teams are in the U.S., and that's less than the other 3 leagues. And don't think for a second that the NHL isn't aware of that. What did Luc Robitaille say to us, Jeff, in his interview? What are the fastest growing areas in the NHL? Some of the non-traditional markets. Mm-hmm. And he sees differences being made. So I think it's going to happen. Here's the other thing, too. Michael Andlauer just paid $950 million.
Yep.
To buy the Ottawa Senators. And Bettman referred to that. I said to him, I remember when the team went in for Vegas at 500 and all of a sudden Seattle came on the radar. I remember the Board of Governors meeting where he talked about it. And I asked him, what's the expansion fee going to be? And he could not wait to answer that question and say $650 million. Mm-hmm. Well, he was ready for it again on Wednesday too. And I said, what's the expansion going to be? He said, a lot. And so, what that says to me is that they're getting ready for it. They're preparing for it. what did he come out and say? He came out and said, look, if you have a building and you're ready to go, come to me. Do you think that Ryan Smith did that interview with us last year without the NHL knowing about it?
Oh, I'm sure they did. I'm sure that there was a
That's
courtesy
Ryan
call.
Smith's
I'm 100%
introduction
sure.
to the NHL. So
Yes.
this is coming. And it's because the NHL feels that compared to the NBA and Major League Baseball and the NFL, there's pockets in the United States where they can still go to. And I think the sport as a whole feels that way.
And you know what? I look at that. I look at those numbers, and I think one thing: when the book is written on this chapter of NHL, when the book is finally written on what happened over the last, let's just take the salary cap. When the book is written on the salary cap era, and that's going to dovetail into this, round of rapid expansion era again. I think one of the most crucial days was when they redid the expansion draft rules. That has introduced a bounty into the NHL, because what we saw right away was, because of those rules and the Vegas Golden Knights able to ice a competitive team that took them to the Stanley Cup final in the first season, all of a sudden you're Seattle and you're like, oh, do we get the same rules too? Meanwhile, Columbus and Minnesota and Nashville are there sitting there saying, oh, whoa, where were these rules? And we had to struggle. And I really think, Elliotte, one of the biggest days maybe in the history of the sport is when they redid the expansion rules to allow expansion teams to be competitive.
I think that's fair.
And put aside the idea of, well, you're an expansion team, you suffer and bleed for 10 years, and then maybe you'll have a modicum of decency on your team. That rule change has been so crucial to all of this. Now we're talking about $1 billion. And here's another question for you, because here's what I thought of when I was reading your piece. I thought, what am I thinking if I'm executive director of the NHL Players Association, Marty Walsh, and I'm hearing Gary Bettman talk about expansion fees being big? Now, I know that means new teams come in, so new jobs come in too.
Yep.
But we're talking about billions of dollars. And I know
good
that there
luck
are
with
hills.
that.
I know there are hills to die on, and that'll probably be one where the NHL will dig in their heels. But Marty Walsh seems very much committed. Where Donald Fear, like to think that there was a lot of new money for the players found in international hockey, for example. It seems as if Marty Walsh, correct me if you think I'm off base here, it seems as if Marty Walsh is more concerned with growing HRR. And if you're the executive director of the Players Association, are you not looking at expansion fees of $1 billion and saying, we'd like to get some of that in the players' pockets, thank you, in the next round?
You know what's
going to
happen? When Marty Walsh asked for that, you know who Gary Bettman's going to send in? Pat Verbeek and Jeff Solomon.
And they could get their drills out. And
all right, Marty,
on the
you want
executive
something
director.
here? Here's Pat Verbeek. Here's a little ball of hate and the toughest negotiator alive. Good luck with that.
Do you have a thought either way, or a gut feeling on? I mean, I think a lot of us have sort of settled on Salt Lake City, but do you have a sort of gut on how this might happen? Any type of timeline for this? Because I'm with you. I think the NHL is giddy, and I think that all the owners are thinking of themselves like Scrooge McDuck about to dive into basements full of gold coins as soon as the NHL opened the doors to expansion again. You have a thought on how this might play out?
Well, Pierre LeBrun asked him, is this tied in with solving Arizona? And Bettman said no. But as I look from it, I don't see how it can't be kind of tied in one way or the other. Because Salt Lake City is probably your escape hatch for Arizona if that doesn't get sorted out. So, look, basically, like I said, he sent a shot across the bow of anybody who's interested. Get ready. Because at some point in time this year, they're going to have to make a decision on the Coyotes, and then they'll have to make their decision on Salt Lake City. Is it an expansion team, or are they moving the team there? So I think all these cities know if they're serious. And, we're talking Atlanta, we're talking Houston, we're talking Quebec City. They've got to get ready. Now, we're a Canada-based podcast. Most of our fans in Canada, I know there's a lot of people up here who would love to see a team in Quebec City. I mean, I'd love to see it too. The one thing I have trouble with is what's the effect on the business of the Montreal Canadiens? Like, Ottawa got sold for $950. So let me ask you a question, because I know you travel in billionaire circles.
Oh, yes, always. Yeah.
If the Ottawa Senators are at $950, what do you think the Montreal Canadiens are worth?
We're in the billions here, Elliotte, clearly.
Well, thanks, Tips. What a guess. $950. Yeah,
I don't know.
I think the Canadians could be in the billions.
No, I'd say in the billions. Like once upon a time, the idea of the Montreal Canadiens being worth $1 billion. We're old enough to remember when the league was worth about a couple of $100 million, right? Now we're talking about billions of dollars. So I don't know. What are the Montreal Canadiens worth? $3 billion? $3.5 billion?
I think 3.5 might be a little bit high. I'm sure when that comment gets out there, I'll be getting texts disagreeing from certain places. But I bet you 3.5 would be a little bit high. But I don't think it's too far off from there. And here's the question I have: if you have a second team in Quebec, what are the Montreal Canadiens worth?
You think it devalues it that much?
Yes, I do.
You do, eh?
And,
I don't know.
Actually, I would say this. It's not my opinion here that matters. I suspect that people more important than me think it matters.
I just think back, as I'm sure you do, of the old Montreal Canadiens, Quebec Nordiques wars on ice, when it was not just on the ice competition between the two, but it was off the ice. Yep. It was a beer company war. It was a culture war. It was so many different. Like, to me, this was the greatest rivalry in the history of the NHL. Like, that's how, with all due respect, the Battle of Alberta, with all
Jeff,
due
why do you
respect
hate
to
Alberta?
The Rangers and the Islanders, etc. No, man, this was
when
the
Jeff shows
rivalry.
up for the Battle of Alberta, those fans are going to pummel you.
That was a great one.
Classic.
I remember Tim Hunter and Jim Poplinski taking them all on. Here comes McClellan. Here comes McSorley. Don Jackson will take you
Somewhere,
on to Dave Semenko.
Mark Spector, who wrote the book on the Battle of the Alberta, just had a stroke and he doesn't even know why.
You loved those Quebec Montreal
Of course.
games. You could stop.
But nostalgia doesn't sell expansion franchises.
But it raised the value
I think
of
you
both
just
those
have to convince
franchises.
people that it could work. That's all.
Okay, a couple of other notes around the NHL.
But it's coming.
The latest, you wrote about Devon Taves and the Colorado Avalanche. Anything further there?
No, we talked about the last pod. I think that, I don't think there's a lack of will to do this. I think, as I said, in a perfect world, I think everybody would love to get this deal done. The word around the league is there's been no lack of trying here between Taves' reps and the Avalanche. But unless someone budges on term, it's a very hard deal to do. Very hard.
Okay, buzzing around the NHL. Dustin Wolf to the Calgary Wranglers. We kept saying towards the end of last season, they need to make a spot for Dustin Wolf. He's proved everything he needs to prove at the American Hockey League level. There's nothing left for him there. He needs to play in the NHL. I know there's a goaltending, glut there with Jacob Markstrom and Dan Vladar, but were you surprised to see Dustin Wolf sent to the American League? Or is it just temporary?
First of all, Jeff, we should give congratulations to the Calgary Flames and their fans as politics is nuts, but the kookiest politics are at the city council level. The limited amount of time I have done politics, city councils are by a mile the kookiest people. And
which is why I'll miss the Coyotes if they leave. That's why. And
that has certainly been proven along the way in this Calgary building saga. Yeah. But the announcement made on Thursday, final agreement signed between Province City Flames and the Stampede to make the new arena official, according to Eric Francis, and the construction 2024 and the hope. And it's always good when you start about, as anyone who's ever done a renovation or a new house, when the sentence starts with hope, you're always in a bad place. But hope is the arena will be ready for the 2026-27 season. But that's big for the Flames. It's, that you look up the road, their biggest rivals in the 93rd best rivalry in NHL history, according to Jeff Merrick. They're in that beautiful new building The arena in Edmonton is spectacular. You know that the people in Calgary who hate Edmonton have been slowly dying inside because of what's been going on up the highway. Now they're going to have a beautiful shining arena of their own, and congratulations to the Flames and their fans. As for Dustin Wolf, here's the thing, Jeff. As talented as Dustin Wolf is, he had to beat someone out of a job. Honestly, I don't think it was really set up for Dustin Wolf to make that team. I think he really had to give Calgary a reason to put him on there because they have two goalies who need waivers, both of whom are signed, and they didn't want to lose Vladar for nothing. But the people who saw Wolf play more than I did, they said he didn't do enough to take the job. And that's what Dustin Wolf had to do. I'm looking around, Philly, Wade Allison wasn't on waivers on Thursday, but there was some talk that maybe Philly might have to do that because he's getting beat out by the likes of Bobby Brink. And when you're a young team like Philly, you know what John Tortorella is thinking. He's thinking, if you're going to be on this team, you're going to earn it. I'm not lying to the players. I'm trying to build a culture. They know who deserves to be on the team. And if you get beat out, you get beat out, and that's your problem. I think with Dustin Wolf, I think the Flames initially looked at it as he'll probably start the year in the minors. But I think if he really beat out on paper Vladar or Markstrom, look, he wasn't beating out Markstrom, but I'm talking about on paper, then I think the Flames would have had something to think about. It just doesn't sound like he did it. Now, I can understand the kid not being happy. There's nothing else that kid can do in the American Hockey League. He's been goalie of the year twice. He's been the MVP. But I think at his stage of where he is in the lineup where he is, he had to beat someone out of a job. And it just, unfortunately, it doesn't sound like he did it.
Just as an aside, as you mentioned Philadelphia and Bobby Brink, throw Tyson Forster into that mix too.
Yes.
And I wouldn't be surprised, Elliotte, if they try to find a way to keep both of them. I know it would take a trade, but they've both played great. And I don't think that Danny Briere or John Tortorella, for that matter, want to let go of Brink or want to let go of Forster and send them down to the American League. I mean, path of least resistance, that's how you do it. But I just do wonder if they try to figure out a way to keep both those guys. All right, elsewhere around the NHL, do you have a thought on the New Jersey Devils? I know it's only exhibition season, but when you run right through it and mow right through the competition like a hog into truffles, you have to pause and say, well done. And on Wednesday night, they beat the New York Rangers 5-2 in a particularly violent affair at times. Kevin Ball on Ryan Lindgren and Jacob Trouba on Tyler Toffoli. So it's good to see that feud alive and well. That is rivalry number 246 in the history, according to me. Number one, of course, Montreal and Quebec, according to Elliotte Friedman. I want to get to Alexis Lafreniere on the Rangers side in a second.
Yeah,
do you have a thought on the Devils?
That's becoming a big topic,
it is,
that Lafreniere. Yes.
We'll get there. But do you have a thought on the Devils? And listen, one thing really quietly here, he almost became, I don't want to say a forgotten part of the Taylor Hall trade. He's a second-round pick, but I mean, Kevin Ball's really done a really nice job here for the Devils, and we know what hard-hitting defensemen can mean, specifically in the playoffs. But anyway, your thoughts on the New Jersey Devils through the preseason?
Look, I mean, you know me, I don't place a lot on preseason results, but you have to play the games. And, what did Jack Hughes say in our interview with him at the media tour in Vegas? He said in years past, they were talking about, okay, what draft pick are we going to get? Who's getting traded at the deadline? But now they're excited for the year to start. Like, they have something to play for. And to their credit, the Devils showed up in a business frame of mind. I've heard players talk about this before. It's the first time you realize you have a chance to be good. Everything's exciting. In the summer, you're excited. You can't wait to come back. Training's exciting. The training camp is exciting. Seeing everyone for the first time is exciting. Even for a change, exhibition hockey is exciting. They're in the glow right now. For the first time ever, they can say, we're good. Like, there's something to be excited about here. We can win. Somebody once compared it to me like that like a little annoying kid who's happy about everything, and you're like, go away from me. I'm depressed. I don't want to see this happiness right now. That's who the Devils are. They're so excited to play, and they're so excited to show what they can do that they steamrolled everybody in the preseason. What it says to me is you've got a team there that's showing up in the right frame of mind. That's what the Devils should be like right now. I was out on Wednesday night late. I had a glass of wine with a couple of reporters, and I don't like to say who it is without asking them for permission first, but I just thought of it as we're doing the podcast. But I'll just mention one of those reporters said to me, "You ready to go to Jersey for the Stanley Cup final this year?" I said, "You think the Devils are going to represent the East?" And he kind of nodded his head and said yes. And I bet you he's not the only person who's thinking about that as the possibility. And for the record, I'm very happy to go to Jersey in June. I'm happy to go anywhere in June, but I'm happy to go to Jersey in June.
For the record, that would make the fans happy of the New Jersey Devils. That would make the players happy. That would make the owner one of the owners of the New Jersey Devils, David Blitzer, happy, who, as you report, is now part of the NHL's executive committee. And as I say, I was about to ask you, why is this significant, or is there any significance in David Blitzer now being part of the NHL's executive committee? And then I'm reminded that he co-owns an MLS team with Czech's Notes Ryan Smith, perhaps future owner in the NHL.
Well, in our interviews, Smith did talk about his history with Blitzer. So, yes. And also, his partner in both the Devils and the 76ers is Josh Harris, who now owns the Washington Commanders. So, but the other thing, too, is I know that in this league, some people look warily at the owners who aren't quote-unquote hockey fans. Like, there are some owners in this league who are huge hockey fans, and there are some owners who aren't necessarily seen as quote-unquote hockey people in terms of growing up in the sport. And Blitzer is a real fan of his Devils. Like, he really loves the Devils. And so I think that's important to people. He's on the executive committee because they had to replace, unfortunately, the late Rocky Wirtz. But when we were told it was the guy, I was like, you know what, that makes a lot of sense.
Okay, Alexis Lafreniere, New York Rangers. Qu'est-ce qui se passe?
I have to say, and that is excellent bilingualism, Jeff.
I love the Battle of Quebec, Elliotte. Let's go back. Oh, please.
I have to say that someone asked me at the end of the Board of Governors meeting last night, are you going to Newark for the Rangers Devils tonight? And I have to confess, there was a time in my career when I was younger and more eager that I probably would have. But now that I'm 53 and coasting, I didn't go. It was my son's birthday, so I thought that was more important. But I have to say this. I was talking to someone this morning because I was going over some of the interesting conversations that are going around on some of these teams, like who are some of the guys who are a bit surprising. They're still around. You mentioned a couple guys in Philly. There's a lot of talk about Fraser Minton in Toronto. There are some players who have hung on a bit surprisingly, and a couple people mentioned to me Leon Bischel, who's in Dallas. They said, "Boy, that kid looks like he's a real find." So you're always talking about the surprises. Who's still around? Who's still up there? And then you start getting to, okay, who hasn't looked great? And someone just said to me they've seen a few Ranger games, and I confess, I really haven't watched them much, but I think there's a lot of concern about Lafreniere and what's going on there. And, like the one thing I really believe is I believe the Rangers have bent over backwards to try to create the right environment for him. It didn't work between him and Gallant, unfortunately. They made the coaching change. Arthur Staple of The Athletic reported earlier this summer that he'd heard out of the draft, he'd heard some rumors about Lafreniere. And, I had heard similar that, maybe he would be out there, but the Rangers came back hard against that. There's some teams that hear trade rumors and they laugh it off, or they just decide to ignore it because they say, well, if I deny this one and I don't deny that one, people are going to say, oh, well, that one must be true. I understand kind of the trap that teams get in with this, but the Rangers came out really hard on that Lafreniere report because they really wanted to protect the kid and put him in the right mental frame of mind to play this year. Like everything they did this offseason was about how can we make him comfortable. We don't want to give up on him. He's still young. He's only 22. He's a number 1 overall pick. He's talented. We want to make this work. They bent over backward. And like I haven't seen him, but people are starting to talk about, boy, he's looked really, really rough. And look, I think you have to wait until the play starts and you see what it's like when the puck really drops. But there's a lot of people concerned about the way this is going. And I'm going to wait to reserve judgment during the season. But people are talking about it. Like, this is... I can't imagine the Rangers aren't a little worried about what they're seeing based on what other people are telling me. The other thing that happens, Jeff, is... Sorry, what pronunciation are you going with for the young rookie from Boston?
Matt Poitras. So he's a second-round draft pick of the Boston Bruins from the Guelph Storm of the OHL.
Did I not hear him called Poitras the other day?
I've heard it flip-flopped back and forth. And it's funny, too, because I just went on the NHL media site to go look at the pronunciation guide, and they're calling him Poitras.
Well... somebody's going to have to do the Bob Cole. And the Bob Cole was he'd go up to the player and he'd say, how do you pronounce your name? And the player would say, I don't care. You can pronounce it however you want. And Bob Cole would say, no, how does your father say it? And that is the way that Bob would sort out the pronunciation. So we're going to have to do that. Anyway.
Poitras was the kid that scored that gorgeous goal against Washington a couple of nights ago.
Well, he scores. He scored again on Thursday night against the Rangers, the 2-1 goal early in the third period to put Boston ahead. And unfortunately for Lafreniere, what happens is people see this young player score, and he's been very, very impressive for the Bruins. And they're like, oh, there's another rookie making an impact. Like, it's just a really, really tough place to be. And I think it's got to be frustrating for him as a human being. But I think it's also got to be really frustrating for the Rangers because they have tried to do everything to make it work for him this offseason. Now, the one thing the Rangers did try on Thursday night, Jeff, was they played him with Panarin on the right side with Panarin in their exhibition game against the Bruins. And if you're going to try to get somebody going, that's the guy to put them with. He had a bad turnover that led to a 2-on-1 early in the game, but I wonder now if this is going to be the Rangers' plan. Let's try to make this work by putting him with Panarin because I can't think of a better way to get somebody going in New York.
I think they're going to give Alexis Lafreniere, again, I think they're going to give him every opportunity with as many skilled players around him to try to make this work. Like there's a lot of jobs that Peter Laviolette has now, Elliotte with the New York Rangers, and trying to get this team going and get them back into a playoff position where they can do some damage. I think one of the top jobs is getting Alexis Lafreniere and Capo Caco, for that matter, going as well.
100% agree.
We'll see where this one goes. Another issue, we're going to see where it goes. I just love watching it because I love watching him in that position because it looks so unique. And at times, Elliotte, I got to be honest with you, pretty dynamic as well. And so far it's worked. And that's Patrick Laine at center. Patrick Laine is centering Johnny Gaudreau and Kirill Marchenko with the Columbus Blue Jackets. And again, Wednesday night, Elliotte looked really good. I know it's only preseason, but can you let me get ahead of myself and say that I like the way it looks, Elliotte? I want this to work.
Absolutely, you can. Yeah. I don't know that the Blue Jackets have ever stopped looking for a center. They were looking for one during the year last year. They were looking for one during the summer. In all the craziness of the start of their season, I had people telling me they were still looking to see if something they liked came available. And maybe, I have a lot of crazy sayings. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. But one of them is if you really want to solve your problem, the best way is to do it internally. And I have no idea if this is going to work, but if it does, it is found money. It's like opening up a pair of jeans that you've put through the washer and you find a $50 bill inside it. That's what this would be.
Yeah.
If you still use cash. I'm one of the few that still likes cash.
Well, that's why you have that big wallet of yours that you lug around. That's your carry-on, is actually your wallet. That we've noticed before. Listen to the 32 Thoughts podcast ad-free on Amazon Music, included with Prime. You know, one of my favorite things back in the early days of hockey Twitter were the Vancouver Canucks fans when I was new to Twitter and would tweet things out really late, and the hashtag became Merrick Late. It was awesome. I loved it. I still giggle about it to this day. Roberto Luongo actually mentioned it, I believe, one time when we were doing an interview with him, the Merrick Late hashtag. How about this one, though? Everybody late. Todd McLellan and the 1-year contract extension that everybody's been late on.
One of the things I'm kind of wondering here is if the Kings in their organization, they had some kind of office pool that said, okay, when are people going to figure this out? Like Rob Blake had August 17th.
Yeah.
Todd McLellan had, I don't know, December 1st. Who are the assistant coaches there? Jim Hiller is one of the assistant coaches there. He had, I don't know, next April.
Trent Yanni.
Trent Yanni, that's right. He had December. Luke Robitaille had the first day of training camp. And the winner is whoever had October the 5th.
Hang on. This, by the way, has a Lou Lamoriello-esque vibe about it, does it not?
Yes, that is true. It absolutely does. The thing is, the difference is here, Lamoriello might not have actually admitted it. I could have gone to him and said, look, I heard this happened. I don't know if he would tell me. Eventually, this one got confirmed. So I think everybody knew that LA was going to extend Todd McLellan. What we didn't realize was what it was going to be. And it's a 1-year extension. And the reason that's significant is because it ties him to the exact same length as Rob Blake. Rob Blake signed an extension at the end of the 21-22 season that takes him through now until the end of it takes him through to June 2025. And now McLellan, who had one more year left in his contract, he's tied up in the same way. So basically it's the Blake McLellan duo. It's like a ticket. It's like a presidential, vice presidential ticket. Blake is the president and McLellan's the vice president, and they're going to try to win the next election. And if the election goes well, maybe they stay. If the election doesn't go well, who knows? But I actually have another theory on this one, and it's always good to try to guess and put words in people's mouth or interpret what they might be thinking.
Always productive.
When it comes to Rob Blake, I think the question has always been not necessarily would he ever be in trouble, but how long does he want to do this? And in no way do I underestimate the competitive nature of Rob Blake. For as quiet and polite a guy as he is, he's a hugely competitive person. But I think I've heard times where people have kind of wondered, how long did he want to do this job? How long did he want to stay as GM? How long would he want to enjoy, or how long would he want to do the day-to-day grind? Like, this is a guy who loves California, loves the beach, who wouldn't, tries to surf as much as he possibly can. And I think that's been kind of the biggest question. You know, right now, the Kings just went through a little bit of a rebuild. They're back. They're in the playoff race the last 2 years. They've run into the Oilers. I think if there's anything you're disappointed about with the Kings is some of their young players haven't panned out. But the bottom line is they're sort of back in the middle of it. And so they're back in the middle of it. And so I think it looks like the team is getting better. I've had a couple of people say to me that they think that people are they think that the Kings are being discounted, and maybe that's just the product of the division they're in, Jeff. But I don't get the sense that Blake's in any trouble. I think what most people, like I said, what they wonder is how long does he want to do this? And now, if it turns out that it's only 2 more years, whoever comes in to replace him, Mark Bergevin, question mark, if he wants to, he can go his own way with the coach too.
Well, one real quick follow-up on the Los Angeles Kings. I love their forwards. That Kopitar-Byfield Kempe line looked really good the other night. Fiala with Dubois looks like it's going to be a real special battery as well. Danault, Moore, Arvidsson, like their forwards look really good. The Gavrikov signing, we talked a lot about last year on the podcast. The Anderson-Doughty pair, at times one of the best in the NHL. I think the only thing we can look at with Los Angeles and say, is this maybe their undoing, is between the pipes. And that's with Phoenix Copley and Cam Talbot. But other than that, and I know that's a premium position. I know it's a really important position, net mining Elliotte. But other than that, I kind of really love this Los Angeles Kings team.
I think the reason they really like McClellan is he's a true X's and O's guy. And if you look at Vegas, which beat Edmonton last year, or you look like Colorado was just a juggernaut 2 years ago. Like they're a great team. Like they're one of the few teams where you put McKinnon and Makar out on the ice with Drysdale and McDavid, and you can actually say, you know what? Like that's a pretty even battle. A lot of other teams don't have that. So if you're going to win in the Western Conference against Vegas, you've got to have 2 things. You've got to have elite talent, and you've got to be able to play a smart game against them, an intelligent game against them. And that's why Vegas beat them last year. I mean, Jeff, how many Oilers told us that? The difference was one, their depth, or they were just smarter. They made the better plays at the most critical times. They didn't beat themselves. Was it Evander Kane who told us that the Oilers kind of beat themselves in that series?
Yep.
So, one thing that McClellan does is he puts together a very disciplined system that, they lost in 7 2 years ago. They lost in 6 last year. He's put them in position where they can at least where they can beat them. And now, they've been improving their roster. Last year it was Danault. This year it's Dubois. At some point in time, the players have to deliver. But I think when you look at the plan that McClellan puts together and the way he gets the Kings to play, they play the way they're going to have to play if they're finally going to beat Edmonton.
And now with Todd McClellan's extension done, the 2 lone coaches on expiring deals, Rod Brindamore in Carolina, DJ Smith in Ottawa. Okay, Elliotte, one more thing here before we get to the thought line. As well, on Thursday, the Wenatchee Wild terminated the contract of Kevin Constantine, and they will now search for a new full-time head coach. Kevin Constantine, former head coach in the NHL, is now an ex-head coach again in the Western League, suspended indefinitely for making derogatory comments of a discriminatory nature in front of his players. There is a players hotline and email address that players can use to complain about abuse. I don't believe that players complained about it directly, but went to a staff member of the organization who used either the hotline or the email. And Wenatchee got on this one fast, as did the Western Hockey League. Turned it over to an independent investigation. Constantine suspended indefinitely. Can't apply for reinstatement until July of 2025.
Well, first of all, Jeff, you cover Junior a lot more than I do. I think it's only fair that if there's anything you want to say editorially, you go first.
The one thing that I want to say about this one is, there's been a lot of whispers and talk about, what it was that Kevin Constantine said in the dressing room, what it was around. And if all of those things are true, it's absolutely disgusting and the punishment is warranted. So I was glad to see that this was a decision that was made by the Western Hockey League.
Jeff, like you said, we don't know specifics. We've all heard the rumors, but we don't know specifics. And without proof, all I can say is that what we've heard is disgraceful, like you said. Okay? So I heard recently that there was a conversation between the NHL and the WHL about something that was going on. And I heard someone in the NHL told the Western Hockey League, do you guys have any bleeping clue about what you're doing? And it's kind of my reaction to some things that are going on in the WHL right now. And I understand in that league, and Jeff, you can tell me if I'm wrong because you know this stuff better than I do, is that it's not so much a league as it's a bunch of fiefdoms that say we do what we do and nobody else can tell us. Am I wrong about that?
That's how it's been for a long time.
The problem with that is when everybody sits there and does their own thing and there's no coordination, then these incidents pop up and you think, and I'm talking about you, the WHL, you think it's a vacuum. It's just on the team and it doesn't reflect on the whole league. And I'm telling you, you're wrong. It reflects on the whole league. And I had a conversation with someone last week who I really respect, has a long history with the WHL and really loves that league. And I said to him, the things I'm hearing out there really bother me. And it's not good for not only the Western Hockey League, it's just bad for hockey, which I think is a great game, and it's offered me so much. And it bothers me when stuff like this happens. I don't like people to feel that they're not wanted. And, you know, and he said, believe me, there are really good people in this league who really care about the kids and really want to do what's best for hockey. And okay, I trust this person. Like I said, I called him for a reason. I'll take him at his word. But what I think those people have to do is they have to get a hold of this league. And they have to say, it can't be like this anymore. It can't be like a bunch of small nation states only caring about their own business and not looking at the greater well-being of the league and sport as a whole. And I think those people need to get control of that league or make their voices heard. You don't have to do it publicly. You know, I know some people think it's grandstanding. That's fine. Do it privately. Because I think the things that are happening coming out of the Western Hockey League right now, they're hurting a great sport. And if you think that your self-interest is more important than the sport, then you're not what hockey is supposed to be about. And you deserve all of the pushback and punishment you get. So I think that's the one thing I'd like to say about all this. It really bothers me to do this. I don't like lecturing people. I'm not perfect. I've got my own flaws. I do plenty of stupid and wrong things myself. But I just look at this and I say, we're taking a weapon and we're shooting ourselves in the foot with this stuff. And I think some of this stuff is preventable. I think if there was greater cooperation or communication internally in that league and between the teams, I think this stuff could have been avoided.
Hang on, just pause on that. Even between the teams and head office,
right?
More conversation that way. I really do believe that that's part of the issue here.
And Jeff, like I said, you know this better than I do. I think you're totally right. And again, I was told by someone who I think really knows that league really well that there are a lot of good people in that league who probably don't speak up as much. It's your time. They're about to hire a new commissioner. From what I understand, they've got some pretty interesting people who have applied. But if I looked at the way this league was run, would I want any part of it? I don't know if I would. I just think it's time for those people to stand up and say, we have to change the way we're doing business because we're hurting ourselves and we're hurting the sport. That's all.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to the program. I'm going to finish up today's show with some emails and some questions. Yes, indeed, it is time for the Montana's Thought Line. Montana's Barbecue and Bar, Canada's home for barbecue. Elliotte Friedman.
Try the ribs.
There you go. And the deep fried pickles. 32 thoughts at sportsnet.ca, 1-833-311-3232. Let's start off with some voicemails. Let's start with Tyler in Michigan. Kick us off, Tyler.
Hey, guys. This is Tyler calling from Michigan. Oh, so happy to be on the Montana Thought Line this week. And the persistent insistence of Elliotte Friedman to try the ribs has left me to make ribs tonight because there's no such thing as the Montanas here in Michigan. That said, my question to you guys is, when you go to a hockey game, what is your favorite bite to eat? Jeff, rink fries do not count in this scenario. Keep up the great work, guys, and take it easy on the new producer.
Oh, that's my go-to, though. I don't really munch on much other than rink fries. I do have a thing about bad coffee, though. I do.
Oh, really?
Try to,
you drink it?
Yeah, I do. Because rink fries are all usually pretty good at hockey arenas all across North America. The coffee's awful, and I don't care because to me it's all about a good basket of fries and a really bad coffee. So that's the only place where I'll put up with really bad coffee. Because yes, Elliotte, as you know, I'm a coffee snob, but I like bad coffee at a rink. What about you?
Okay, first of all, before I get to answering Tyler's questions, two things. Number one, I will not be taking it easy on the new producer. We're Pat Verbeek and Jeff Solomon and Dom. You're in trouble. Secondly, Montana's get into Michigan. What's going on here?
Let's go.
You should be spreading your wings, sowing your wild oats,
spreading your ribs.
Spreading your ribs. That's pretty good. I like that. Jeff, did you ever watch Man vs. Food?
No, I've never watched Man vs. Food.
Okay, so Man vs. Food was a show. It was Adam Richman was the name of the guy, and my wife, Steph, introduced me to it. And Adam Richman, they had to stop doing this show because he would try things, and finally, as I understand it, and someone will tell me if I'm wrong about this, his doctor said to him, you can't do this anymore. Because, and I loved it because he would try things like he was destroying his body.
Oh my goodness.
And I have to say, if you're going to go, this is the way to do it. I loved this show.
This is a horror show for me. I can't watch people do this to themselves. I hate stuff like this. I can't do it.
I watched every episode. I loved it until they had to stop.
Oh,
but goodness. I like that. I will go in there and I will walk in there and I will say, what is either the craziest thing on the menu or what is the local delicacy? Like if I walk into this arena, what do I have to eat? And that's kind of the way I do it. I love hot dogs. Like if I could have a ballpark hot dog or a rink hot dog anywhere, I would eat it. Like you, yeah. I don't care if it's bad, I'll eat it. But I will always ask first, what do I have to eat here?
Bad coffee and rink fries with, wait for it,
a terrible hot
mustard
dog. It's
mustard.
Hockey delicacy. Yes.
Mustard on the fries. Let's go. Okay, another voicemail. Let's go to Tennessee.
Good evening, gentlemen. My name is Maples from Tennessee, by way of South Carolina. This is more a question to start a conversation. When can we finally put to bed the term non-traditional hockey market in regards to the South? A lot of places here, we've had hockey for well over 50 years, and we have our own traditions. I think it's unfair to label us as non-traditional hockey markets. Good job, Jeff. Good job, Elliotte. Good job, New Amel.
You're not Dom. You're New Amel.
I'm going to change. Dom, your name is now getting changed to that on my phone. New Amel. I like that. That one might stick. Well, it's kind of funny, Maples, but I actually used that phrase earlier in this podcast. But I love this voice message. Yeah, I love the fact that you're standing up for your market. I have deep, deep, deep respect for that. I will make it my effort now to bury the phrase non-traditional hockey market. Today on the podcast is the last time you have heard me say it. Every time I say it, I will put $50 into the 32 Thoughts Podcast Fund, which does not exist, but I will start it the next time I use that phrase. Maples, I respect you standing up for your fan base.
The NTHM jar starts now. The non-traditional hockey market jar begins today. Maples in Tennessee, thanks so much for the voicemail there. Let's get to Sherwood Park.
Hey guys, Rick from Sherwood Park here. I wanted to ask you, how does the whole waiver wire work, right? I heard Spencer Martin went on waivers and Tampa was looking to potentially acquire him, but Columbus beat them to it. But how does that work? How did Columbus get that before Tampa Bay? Is it who's quickest to get to a computer and claim them?
Great.
Or
I
is
like
there some
that.
sort of pecking order
I
I don't
wish.
know about? Let me know, fellas, and keep it humming.
Oh, that's a great one. Oh, I got to my phone faster than you. Sorry, Julian Breeze. Wah, ha, ha, ha.
You know what? I think that would actually be a great reality show. As in one person per team, and you put a camera on them, like a spy camera or your laptop camera. Every person one person per team sits down at their computer at 2 p.m. Eastern when the new names come on the wire. And it's a race. You see a name you like, it's a race to click on it first.
I love it.
How awesome would that be?
I just love it. That would be the
that
cool
is
way to do
that
it.
is like a Merrick versus Wyshynski idea.
That is a little bit of MVSW. You're not wrong there. You want to explain how this one works? And this one's interesting because waivers.
It's a great
waivers
question.
Right now kind of winks back at last season, Elliotte.
I want to talk a little bit about something here. Let me answer the question first. Then I want to talk about something else. So, Rick, the way it works is actually pretty simple. It goes in reverse order of the standings. And for the first month of the season, it defaults to last year. So it goes 32-1. And whoever is in 32nd, as many people as you want can put in a claim. So, for example, let's say Spencer Martin, 15 teams wanted Spencer Martin. Then 15 teams would put in a claim. And at the deadline, which is just before 2 p.m. the next day, whoever has the worst record dating back to last season would get him. Now, there is a point in the season, I believe it is November 1st. Don't quote me on that. I never look at these in advance, which is why I never have the best answers to them. But there is a point in the season, and I think it's November 1st, where it changes to points percentage. So last year's stats no longer matter, and it goes from 32-1 based on points percentage, and that determines the waiver order. Now, I have to say something about this. I've had people say to me, don't you think that question is too easy or people should know the answer? So
No.
don't. Well, I'll tell you why. I really, first of all, I agree with you. I think you're right. But second, there was a podcast I listened to last week. I don't always listen to the Kelsey brothers, Jason and Travis. But of course, I listened last week to find out what was going on with Travis and Taylor Swift, right? Because that's the biggest story going in the sporting world right now. And even the NFL is trying to get their broadcast partners to put in free Taylor Swift commercials. The New York Post reported that today. So you've got this incredible force, Taylor Swift, descending on the NFL, and all of her fans are now interested, and some of them know football and some of them don't. But so the Swifties who don't know football were asking the Kelsey brothers about the rules. And I just have to say, I think it would have been really easy for those two guys or anyone else to mock the Swifties and say, how could you guys be so stupid, or how dumb can you be, or what a terrible question. But no. For the part that I listened to, they answered the questions honestly and gave good answers. And to me, I loved it because football is a great game. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions about football. And I think the more people that get introduced to it, the better we all are. I feel the same way about hockey. Great game. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. And the more people who get introduced to it, the better we all are. So I don't care how dumb you think a question is. We're happy to answer it because Jeff and I, as dumb as you might think you are, we're both dumber.
That's the truth. And listen, no one ever that I recall. And man, did I ask a ton of questions when I used to go to the Hockey Hall of Fame when I was a kid. Like I told you the stories about my parents dropping me off at the Hockey Hall of Fame and like leaving me there for hours on end, which is why they were never on the cover of today's Parent magazine. But the Hockey Hall of Fame was my babysitter. And I'm sure I annoyed staff with the millions and millions and millions of annoying, very basic, 8-9-year-old questions. And no one ever talked down to me. No one ever ridiculed me for asking really basic, rudimentary questions for hockey. So who am I to do that to anybody else based on, the 40 plus years that I've been following the sport closely, or 45 or however old I am? I've actually forgotten. So yeah, everyone gets on at a different time in their life. Treat them all as you would have liked to have been treated when you got on this hockey highway. This comes to us from Victor. Hey, Elliotte and Jeff. We'll finish up on this one, Elliotte. Love the podcast, especially when you guys talk about my Florida Panthers. Elliotte, quick, satisfy Victor, talk about the Florida Panthers.
I think Bill Zito would love to get Patrick Kane.
Dun, 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 dun. There you go, Victor. To finish off your question, my question for you guys is kind of a silly one, but I want to know why the NHL doesn't use white netting for the out-of-play nets. Wouldn't having that make it easier for refs to see when the puck goes out of play, not to mention the cameras? Just a thought I had while watching some old videos. Thanks. Looking forward to the next episode. I called someone in the league about this today.
Yes, what did they tell you?
They said it's for it's to make it easier for the fans to watch the game.
That is 100% true. For a change, someone from the league gave you a legitimate answer. Victor, that is the reason.
The season hasn't actually started yet, so they're being truthful.
That's right. That's right. They're being honest.
Wait till the puck drops and they can start lying again.
Victor, Jeff is right, and the person who told me that is right. They did test. I remember when the netting came in, they did test white netting because initially they thought that made the most sense, but it was actually, the fans told them it was harder to see through the white than the black. And in that situation, the netting is protective for the fans, but you don't want to upset your fans. So, and I heard it wasn't even close. Like I heard the feedback was massive, pro-black over pro-white netting. So that's what it was, that the fans voted and they listened.
Good question. All depends on your perspective. That one, obviously, from a referee and official's perspective, make it easier to see the puck. The answer from the fans' perspective, the people that have the nerve to pay the tickets, let's let them watch the game. How about that? Okay, so on that, we'll wrap it up. This podcast returns at our usual Monday morning drop. We are only a scant few days away from the puck drop on the real NHL season. We're getting there. Elliotte, I'm sure you've noticed the exhibition games, the preseason games are starting to look a little bit more like NHL hockey. Not for the full 60 minutes, but the games are starting to look better. So it's time to cue the excitement. The NHL season is on the horizon. People to thank: our supervising producers, Ryan Fabro and Canberra. Dom Shramati, or the new Amel, is our producer. Jordan McRae is our audio editor, and Griffin Porter is our associate producer. Have a great weekend. 32 Thoughts, the podcast, returns on Monday.